Chapter 153 Yue Lu Hall. Han Li stood on a stone platform halfway up the Great Shaman's Mountain. About 10 meters wide, the stone platform was a huge immortal's abode entirely covered by a spell formation, Yue Lu Hall. This Yue Lu Hall was the Yellow Maple Valley's specialized storage for magic tools, medicine pill recipes, and secret technique manuals. In addition, it offered all sorts of assistance for pill and magic tool refining as well as a few common raw materials. It could be regarded as one of the most important places in the sect. Thus, not only was it covered in many layers of spell formations, but it was also patrolled by over 100 disciples in case outside enemies invaded. It was also said that there was a core formation martial ancestor secluded within, keeping watch all year in case other great experts were to invade this place. After Han Li went over the relevant information in his mind, he calmly walked forward. Just as he landed, there were several gazes that sized him up from a secret location. However, upon seeing Han Li's magic power was ordinary, they quickly vanished. Even if it were merely that, Han Li was secretly startled. Since Han Li was unable to respond to these people, they demonstrated that they either had first-rate concealment magic tools or their magic power was truly above his, which meant that they were elite disciples of the 12th layer or above. How could this not cause Han Li to be even more cautious? After walking forward several steps, he stopped. Then he softly chanted several verses and raised his hand, releasing a stream of red light toward the seemingly empty space in front of him. As a result, the empty space fluctuated for a moment, and a wall of light appeared with a flash of red light, blocking him. Immediately after, two disciples wearing red clothes appeared behind the wall of light. "Were you the one who triggered the restrictive spell?" a red-clothed disciple coldly asked. "This one is Han Li. Do we care who you are? Since you haven't reached Foundation establishment, you need a sponsor. Bring out the token of trust of one who vouches for you," the disciple explained, impatiently interrupting Han Li. After Han Li heard those impolite words, he did not angry. He took out a jade talisman from his bosom and set it down on the ground in front of the wall of light. At this time, the cold-mouthed red-clothed disciple held his hand against wall of light. A hole the size of a hand appeared in the wall. The other red-clothed disciple who had yet to speak lightly waved his hand, causing Han Li's jade talisman to fly like a small wing through the hole and into his hand. "Senior Martial Brother Ma is your sponsor?" the red-clothed disciple who looked at the jade talisman exclaimed, somewhat astonished. "It truly is a token of trust that Martial Senior Ma has given to my humble self," Han Li honestly replied. However, he was shocked from his heart. The age of these two red-clothed men weren't very old. However, they were actually Foundation establishment experts. This had greatly shocked him. It should be known that in a cultivation sect, status was not determined by seniority. Status was determined by the depths of their cultivation. After all, the path of cultivation could only be tread by the strong. That Senior Brother Ma who is obsessed with refining pills all day? The red-clothed disciple at the side asked in surprise. "That's right, he even vouches for people? This is truly shocking. Are you his personal disciple or a blood relative or something else entirely?" The red-clothed disciple holding the jade talisman, repeatedly asked with curiosity. "No, this junior simply takes care of his medicine garden on Martial Senior Ma's behalf. For this token of trust, this disciple has agreed to look after the garden for free for a year." Han Li currently didn't dare to slight them and respectfully replied with a bitter smile. What he said was completely true. Actually, when Han Li began to plan to acquire pill recipes, he thought that because this Martial Senior Ma planted so many medicinal herbs, he would have conducted a great amount of research on pill concoction. He was certain to have many medicine pill recipes on hand. That was why several months before, Han Li took advantage of the period when the small old man arrived to take the medicine ingredients and made a few indirect inquiries. The result caused Han Li's eyes to become foolish-eyed. When the small old man heard these words, he immediately shook his head as if he were beating a drum with it. Regardless of what Han Li said, he was rejected. According to this Marshal Senior Ma, his pill recipes were the results of the experience of a pill refining master's countless failures. How could he possibly give them to others that casually? It was unconditionally impossible. However, when Han Li earnestly explained that he only wanted those original, unaltered pill recipes, the small old man looked at him and impatiently told Han Li in a blunt manner to go to Yue-Lu Hall and find them himself. Why should he be inconvenienced in such a way to help him? Like that, Han Li was forced to work a year for free in exchange for the small old man's token of trust and was able to presently come to Yue-Lu Hall. It turned out to be like that. I was under the impression of the rumor that Senior Brother Ma's temper suddenly changed. After the two red-clothed men listened, they looked at each other with a smile. These words were spoken with a snicker by the one holding the jade talisman. "All right, you may enter." The red-clothed men simultaneously cast a spell on the wall of light, causing the wall of light to rigidly squeeze open a 3-meter-wide passage. It was just enough for one person to pass through. When Han Li saw this, he hesitated for a moment. Then his figure immediately flashed, and he was within the wall. After he entered the wall of light, something caused him to become greatly surprised. When he was outside, because of the red wall of light's obstruction, Han Li was not able to see the interior. Now that he was inside, apart from a small circular spell formation, he saw that the mountain was unexpectedly bare. There weren't any buildings at all, causing Han Li to be incomparably puzzled. Take care of this jade talisman. Every time you come here, there will be a routine inspection. That is the rule here. After they released their spell on the wall of light, the person who examined the token of trust returned the jade talisman to Han Li. Many thanks to these two martial uncles. Han Li withdrew his curious glances and saluted as respectfully as he could. He hoped to give these two men a good impression of him. After all, he would be returning here often in the future. Follow me. It was obvious Han Li's inclination was not in vain. These two's expressions grew much more mild. After all, the majority of those who came here were disciples of the same generation. Naturally they wouldn't be as overly courteous as Han Li, causing the two to have a favorable impression towards Han Li. However, Martial Nephew Han, why did you want to come to this Yue-Lu Hall? Regardless of whether one is starting to refine pills or magic tools, it would be best to wait until one is foundation establishment. You've come here a bit too early. One of the red-clothed men asked. At this time, these two men were bringing Han Li towards the circular spell formation. This junior simply witnessed Marshal Senior Ma refine many pills. He also saved a few raw materials while caring for the garden. That was why he wished to test his luck and see whether or not he may find a suitable recipe to refine a few medicine pills to progress his cultivation. After all, Martial Nephew's aptitude is truly poor and can only rely on external power. Han Li replied half-truthfully, deliberately falling behind the two people half a step. So it's like that. However, Martial Nephew shouldn't be too hopeful. After you enter, you will understand my meaning. The other man lightly shook his head, not very optimistic of Han Li's goal. At this time, the three had already walked in front the circular spell formation. Then a red-clothed person indicated Han Li to stand in the middle of the spell formation. The two stood to the left and right of the spell formation. Usually, the use of this transportation formation requires the payment of a low-grade spirit stone. However, since it is Martial Nephew's first time, we will exempt you this time. Next time, however, we will be completely acting in accordance to the rules. One of the men said with a weak smile. Just as those words were uttered, the two men each released a stream of red light toward the spell formation in an extremely practiced manner. Then the several spirit stones embedded in the formation shined brightly. Without having the chance to thank the two, he suddenly felt the sky spin and saw his surround scenery to become indistinct. Then a brilliant light flashed and Han Li arrived in an unfamiliar hall. He was currently standing in a spell formation exactly like the one he had used before. So this was the rumored transportation formation. Truly wonderful. Han Li inwardly exclaimed in astonishment. After his feelings of discomfort from the formation faded away, he swept his gaze across the large, extraordinary hall.